President Trump is back in Washington and facing a new round of political controversies and global threats after wrapping up his first overseas trip. Earlier, he marked Memorial Day by visiting the tomb of the unknown soldier in Arlington.
But the president is already focusing on North Korea's latest missile test. He tweeted, quote, "North Korea has shown great disrespect for their neighbor China by shooting off yet another ballistic missile, but China is trying hard."
CBSN political contributor and White House correspondent for Time, Zeke Miller, is in our Washington bureau. He joins us now. So, Zeke, lots of news to cover today. Let's start with this new North Korea threat. It's a big test for President Trump's foreign policy and deal-making abilities. How does he address the escalating tension on the Korean peninsula without starting a war?
I mean, that's been the real challenge for Donald Trump so far in his administration. We've seen provocations from North Korea over and over again since President Trump has been in office. We do know that this subject was, did come up in his meeting with President Obama during the transition, where then President Obama told then President-elect Trump, "This is the one of the key issues that you need to deal with that I couldn't deal with." And right now we've seen some progress by the president to get China on board to stiffen sort of their pressure against North Korea, but we have not seen any signs that has affected the North Korean leadership. So that's if they're trying very hard and nothing is happening, they still have the same underlying problem. That's the challenge. The White House isn't quite sure where do they go after this.
Well, Zeke, we're seeing these reports about Jared Kushner, these back channels to Russia. But I have a question for you here. Even if he didn't violate the law, even if he didn't violate protocol, doesn't it show some questionable judgment? And we've seen for Attorney General Loretta Lynch, for Secretary Clinton, even though they didn't violate laws, when it comes to showing bad judgment, that can have enormous consequences in Washington. What do you think the consequences here will be for Jared?
Certainly, the president is not happy with Jared Kushner sort of being and sort of his role at the center of this media firestorm right now. I've heard that from some aides at the White House. There's a sense that that between the Russia stuff, his pressure on the Paris Climate Agreement, some of the ethical issues surrounding his family's businesses, that things have changed. Where he was once the golden boy within the Trump orbit, the one who had centralized power the most of all of the warring Trump factions over the last 4 months, he now seems to see some of that waning as the questions about him and ties to Russia come up again. But it sort of gets to the broader point of there's not a lot of there in the sense that there's not a there's no indication that he did anything illegal yet. I mean, but there's certainly a lot of smoke and a lot of questions that the White House has yet to be able to provide really satisfactory answers for.
You mentioned the Paris Climate Agreement. The president has said that he will make a decision on whether to withdraw from that deal this week. Talk about why that is so significant, and if he does choose to withdraw, how that could impact our relationship with our allies.
I think we saw some of this last week at the G7, where the seven of the largest economies in the world get together, have this meeting essentially, and 6 of them are aligned on let's maintain this agreement and affirm their commitment. And the president sort of essentially puts out a dissenting statement that sends some of the fellow foreign leaders sort of struggling to deal with him in a sense that they were expecting this agreement to come. It has come into force. They want it to continue. The president is weighing both those options. We've heard that from aides again over the last couple of weeks that he really is 50-50 on it. Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump are obviously pushing him to stay in it. Some at the State Department as well, just because that diplomatic fallout would be so drastic. That said, the nationalist group within the White House, Steve Bannon and others, and sort of also traditional Republicans are very skeptical of the agreement and are pushing the president to, if not fully withdraw, then to somehow tinker around the edges to try to claim that he sort of scored a negotiating win.
Yeah, and Steve, Zeke, actually, that makes a really interesting segue into this question about German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who says that her country cannot rely on the U.S. or the U.K. anymore, and this comes after President Trump's comments on the Paris deal, as we've just been talking about. The president needs to walk a fine line here. On one hand, he's got to please people who have supported him because they want an America First policy, one where we're not perhaps being as accommodating, let's use that word, as we might have been in the past with some of our NATO allies. On the other hand, the president is going to need some of these leaders and these countries to accomplish some of his more global goals.
Yeah, I mean, that's the challenge. I mean, we've seen the White House struggle to redefine America First in the first 130 some odd days in office. Now, I mean, in the sense that it's America First, but America actually is going to be leading other countries, or America's interests will somehow align with other countries. The president put his administration in a box when he said American interests first, alliances sort of be damned. And now the president is sort of having and his administration is sort of walking that back because of the realities on complicated issues like Syria and North Korea. I mean, every issue, the battle against ISIS. I mean, it requires a multilateral approach. It requires partners, and particularly if the president wants to offload some of the responsibilities in leading these fights and leading these operations, he needs alliances and partners around the world, people who trust him. Angela Merkel's comments, I think, are something we've seen. That was a public comment, certainly a sentiment we've heard privately from various world leaders, embassies around town, saying there's a real question whether or not America is willing to lead a sort of a global coalition against on any issue, and is President Trump capable of doing that? Is he capable of reaching across the political divides, ideological divides, national interest divides to try to come up with, to sort of forge consensus to deal with intractable problems? It's going to be a test for him. So far, we have yet to see sort of real successes there for him.
Even with all of this going on, the president is choosing to tweet about his health care bill and tax reform, two very important issues to many of his supporters, but they both face considerable obstacles, you could say. What do you think is going to happen with those issues going forward?
Yeah, certainly they face very difficult roads. Essentially, the health care bill is getting rewritten in the Senate. Notably, his tweet about health care, that's not included in his budget. Sort of the notion of increasing funding, his budget actually sort of decreases health care funding by shifting the burden down to states. There seems to be he's still fighting a campaign rather than trying to govern right now. Where he's sort of these one-line 140-character messages to his supporters and the media, rather than trying to talk to lawmakers on Capitol Hill who can actually help him accomplish his legislative agenda. The Senate is reworking the health care bill. The tax reform plan that the Trump administration outlined last month is essentially just a one-pager. Nothing else. The details haven't been worked out yet with the Hill. They're still trying to do that. And the president hasn't really been engaged on either front in a very long time. Certainly has been away for the last 9 or so days on that foreign trip. But we haven't seen any sort of wheeling and dealing around this that he would need to do if he wants to sort of claim ownership and actually accomplish those legislative items.
All right, Zeke Miller in Washington. Zeke, I have no idea why I called you. Well, actually, I do have an idea. It's because I was listening to some Steve Miller Band last night, and so I think that song was still stuck in my head, The Joker. Not that you're a joker, Zeke Miller. We love having you on. Thanks so much.
Have a good one.